So this is the brand new 2024 Hyundai Tucson, and this is Hyundai's most popular SUV. And right here we have the N-Line with the hybrid motor, so you get the best of both worlds, and most importantly, the efficiency. But the big question, is it worth a lot? Let's find out. The 2024 Tucson Hybrid N-Line combines a bunch of features that come standard. From the 10.25-inch digital driver display, 8 Bose speakers, to the heated semi-leather seats. But it's not just about luxury, it's about power. Because under the hood, a 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder hybrid powertrain churns out 226 horsepower and 258 pounds of torque. And with all-wheel drive being standard and over 800 kilometers of range on a full tank, this beast is ready to conquer any road. You know what was the first thing I noticed when I drove this Tucson?
What?
How smoothly it switches between EV and gas mode. Because a lot of hybrids, when they switch between EV and gas mode, you really feel it. You can hear the engine roaring up. This one is more seamless. It's just like a quick, easy.
Yeah, it's smooth. You don't really notice it.
And the thing is, I think one of the things that contribute to that is the fact that this Tucson is not using a CVT transmission, but it's using more of like a 6-speed transmission. So that just makes that momentum a little bit smoother. But
you do hear, when you're driving though, you do hear
it pop up.
The fact that it is, yeah, exactly.
But it's just, out of all the hybrids I've driven recently, one just seems to be the more quiet, natural one that does it without really noticing it. Like the V6, you can hear the engines roar up,
Speaking of quiet though, I also find that this, the cabin is really quiet.
Yeah.
When you drive, the outside noise is not really
I still find the EV9 we reviewed last week to be a slightly quieter, but this overall, especially for the price point, is very quiet, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit of road noise I'm hearing right now, but we are going over a rough road. But for the price point, cabin inside here, super, super quiet.
So let's talk about the price point. So this is the N-Line.
Yeah.
And the N-Line this year only comes as a hybrid. You don't have the option of getting the N-Line as a gas model.
Gotcha.
So the price point is really, really impressive. 43,000 Canadian dollars for this car. Fully loaded. It has all the features you could possibly need in a car.
Right.
And I can't imagine a better car for this price.
Yeah, and even some of the simple things you usually pay extra for, like heated seats, standard.
Right, this has it.
Doesn't matter. Even the non-N-Line has heated seats, which is crazy.
This is the cheapest you can get for the hybrid Tucson.
Yeah.
Then you have the luxury hybrid, which is really funny because the price of the luxury hybrid is the exact same as this one. But you get the leatherette seating. You get the leatherette seating. This one has cloth and leather combined.
It's very sporty looking.
But there are some features about the luxury hybrid that the N-Line doesn't have. So it's kind of like certain things that you want, you get in the N-Line, and certain things that you would want in the luxury model that you wouldn't get on the N-Line. So it's like you're kind of swapping out certain features.
Speaking of hybrid, like you said, this is not a plug-in hybrid. Range has been okay. Good for a hybrid.
You get about 800 kilometers on a full charge with this car. So Matt, how do you feel about not having an actual gear shift and having
buttons
to switch gears?
I prefer a gear shift. Your Lincoln, for example, has buttons. I hate it.
It took me a while to get used to, but once I got used to that feature, I actually really started to like it.
I don't know. Once you take the gear shift away, it makes the car not feel like a true car. That's just my opinion. Maybe because I've grown up with gear shifts all my life, like most people have. Starting to push buttons just feels, I don't know. Even my Tesla has stocks,
right?
Well, my older Tesla, the new ones don't, but it's just, I like that. I'm turning the car on.
I feel like this is more of a modern feature, right?
It's simplified.
It's simplified.
But I don't like it.
It's clean. You don't have the extra gear shift on near the steering wheel.
Listen, I don't think it's cleaner. It would take up the same space if there's a gear shift here, And then of course you have all this piano black plastic around it, which doesn't add to the overall look.
But that's personal preference too. You have the piano black here all around surrounding the digital screen.
This is what, a 10.25-inch screen? Mm-hmm. These buttons are not buttons. They're capacitive, and you get no feedback when you press them, which is kind of disappointing. I would rather have physical buttons than this. It's kind of like you're using a touch screen, even though technically it's not a touch screen. but I would have loved some feedback when I'm pressing it. But I guess you can make the same argument for, let's say, like a Tesla Model 3, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah, but at least everything is accessible. Like your heat's there, your AC's there. You don't have to fiddle through menus. If you want to get to something quickly, there's shortcut buttons all across the top, which is very, very handy. The one thing that I don't like, though,
Not wireless
is
charging?
there's no wireless charging. You have 2 USB-A ports. I would have loved to see a Type-C port, but there's not. But at least you can do Android Auto or CarPlay wired. There's no wireless Android Auto or CarPlay, which seems to be a big problem for a lot of Hyundai cars. Like, a lot of them just don't have it, you know? There are some of them that are coming out, like the Kia EV9, for example, has wireless CarPlay. Even, I believe, some of their newer, less expensive cars are coming out with wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but I would have loved to see it in a 2024 model. It is 2024 at the end of the day, you know?
Right, but okay, so getting back to the price point, because that's like the main thing when we're talking about this car, right? For $43,000, how many hybrid cars can you get with all of these amazing features, right? We have to keep coming back to the price point, because of course there are things in this car that are missing that you would love.
But
right?
but like wireless CarPlay is like standard on the cheapest cars on the market. Anyways, I'm not gonna beat this up for the entire ride, but like that should just be a standard feature. But I agree, the price is good.
So let's talk about the seats. The comfort of the seats. I feel they're very comfortable. You have a mix of both leatherette and material, which is nice. It's not just the cloth material. And I feel like they're really comfortable. Like I can picture myself going on a long drive with this car and not feel uncomfortable.
I think because they're black and you have the mix, like you said, it just kind of blends in. So it feels like you're driving on leatherette seats, even though when you touch it, it doesn't feel leather.
It doesn't look leatherette at all.
No,
they don't look leatherette.
But around the cloth parts, it does. And because it's the N line, you have that sporty vibe to the seats. Like you have some leather red stitching, for example, on the dashboard and across the armrest, and then a little bit on the actual seats.
Cloth, the stitching here with the red lines going across the side just look really cool and sporty.
Yeah, I think they did a great job
with it,
making the interior cabin look as good as you can get for this price point.
For
you know
sure.
what I mean? Like it still looks sporty, like you want to be in here. Even though it's only over 200 horsepower, like you still have enough kick to get some good speed. It's a very well rounded car, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
The glove box over there is decent storage, not a lot, but it's fine. And then the middle console, you have a very, very deep.
It's really deep.
Pocket
and you have some storage on the side here too, which is great in the middle console.
Yeah.
Down below.
On both sides, actually, you have storage, which is kind of neat. Now, my seat is electrical. Like, I can move it with a push of a button.
Right,
but
and mine is
yours
manual.
is not.
Okay, so fun fact. So,
oh God, here we
go. For the
go.
longest time, I thought this car was called the Tucson.
Yes, you're calling it the Tucson.
The Tucson, right? I might be the only one that thought this was called the Tucson.
I mean, it's spelled like it should be the Tucson.
But the fun fact is that this car is actually named after a city in Arizona called Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, which makes sense.
And this car, this SUV, is the #1 selling SUV for Hyundai, and they have sold to date over 7 million of this car since it launched in 2004.
And it makes sense. Like when you look at other hybrids, they can be quite expensive unless you're buying something like a Prius.
Yeah.
But, I think this is at a good price point for a lot of people who don't want to make the transition to an electric car, but still want, efficiency, range, and the no anxiety feeling of not having to worry about charging your car,
Right, absolutely.
So, which is kind of nice. So this is what the car looks like. I'm digging the look. It's kind of sporty, especially with the way it swoops down on the back and the different levels to the car. The black and white two-tone finish give it that swoop effect. You have the gas on the left-hand side, which is the driver's side. Door handles, you can put your whole hand inside to easily get in. The wheels are standard 19 inches on the N line. The rims, I'm liking the look. They don't look fully electric, but they don't look like your typical gas rims either. So I guess you can call them hybrid. But you have a bunch of different levels to this car. So you have a bit of a futuristic look. You do have the N badging over here, and there's a little button on this door handle so that you can actually lock the car. The rear of the car looks a bit more aggressive than the front just because of the way the lights protrude from the back. They're like little spikes. That's what kind of reminds me of. But you do have a long light that spans the entire trunk. You have a brake light at the top. The glass swoops down in an angle. The bumper has these little things protruding out of it. If you want to get into the back of the car, there's no button over here where your hand would naturally go. It's just the camera for your rear view camera. If you want to get inside, underneath here is where the button is. Now, before I show you that, you don't see a wiper. And that's because the wiper is embedded just under the spoiler over here. And every time you turn it on, it swoops down, gets rid of the water, and then comes back in, always giving you a clear view of the rear, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, to get inside, you just tap your hand underneath here. This is an electric motor, so it is going to open up. And then what you have here is a lot of trunk space, just under 39 cubic inches of space, which is just a ton of room to store your stuff. Cubic feet of space. And as you can see, look at that, lots of space right here. Now, there is no spare tire. They couldn't fit one in this specific model because it's the N line. And because it's a hybrid, there's just no room for it. Then you do have a little bit of storage components on the bottom where you can store little things like wires or devices, but that's basically about it. You do have a 12 volt, 180 watt charger on the left, a little speaker over here, and the back seats are in a 60-40 split. So you can't electrically have them go down. You have to use the little hatch over here. And when you do it, it will fully recline and you can lay them completely flat, giving you a lot more space to store your items. So quickly on the front design, I just want to talk about the grille for a second. The N-Line has this more blacked out grille, which looks super stealthy. And when these lights are off, it blends into the rest of the grille to give it one unified look. But once they're on, it looks like it's part of the grille, which I think looks absolutely awesome. You have your diffuser over here for wind to obviously come in and cool down the engine. And then you have a little bit of a grill on the bottom, or bumper rather, that kind of sticks out. That gives it a bit of an aggressive look, but overall I think that it did a pretty good job with the front design.
So the back seat is not as comfortable as the front seat. The material is very similar. You have the mix of leatherette material and cloth material, but it still doesn't feel as comfortable as the front. You have two USB-A ports right here. You have your venting here. You have a little bit of storage, not that much. You have one cup holder in the door, and you have two right here. So a comfortable armrest. The front feels a little less plasticky than the back. The doors are nice, but a little more plastic and not as much leatherette on the doors, but it still looks nice. Not very premium, but still nice. You have a beautiful panoramic sunroof that spans all the way to the back, which is great. You have so much light. And these seats also recline a bit, not that much, but they do recline, so that's a good feature. You don't have the transmission tunnel. You do, but it's not that tall. So someone sitting in the middle would still, I think would still feel comfortable sitting in the middle as a third passenger in the back.
How about the headspace?
Headspace is really great. You have a lot of headspace. I'm not that tall, but I still feel like someone taller than me would have
no
enough.
problem.
Yeah, I think so. You have 41 inches of leg space, so that is significant. And anybody much taller than me would still have a ton of leg space, which is great.
So the big question, is the Hyundai Tucson, or as my wife likes to call it, the Tucson, worth the watt? Absolutely. I think this is a great car for the price. They throw in all the features you need for its price point. Everything from heated seats to four-wheel drive to being a hybrid model, saving you money on gas. And for those of you afraid to switch to electric, it just does everything right. And I understand now after driving the N-Line why this is Hyundai's most popular SUV, because it gives you all those features for a very good price point and a drive that's very respectable. Now, if you have any questions, let us know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys in the next one.